In this interview, I had the opportunity to speak with Acharya Shunya, a spiritual teacher and lineage holder from India, who speaks about the entirety of the Vedic path and how it can lead us to a state of profound self-remembering. So first of all, let me tell you that I am very, very happy to be talking to you. I've spent some time listening to your teachings online and reading your book, Sovereign Self. And I feel like I have some sense of what you're doing. And I'm moved by your bringing the tradition of Vedanta to the West in a way that is very accurate and honoring of the ancient lineage, but also adapted to the Western mindset. At least that's what I see in what you're doing. And I think your book is excellent, Sovereign Self. I enjoyed it very much. And you're a perfect person to speak to for this issue because we wanted to look at spiritual practice in the contemporary world. Because clearly the world we live in today is a very different world than the world that the Vedas were written in.
Yes.
Right? And yet, in some ways, the human condition is the same.
Yes. Well, I appreciate you appreciating because it takes a discerning eye to see what I'm doing or the value of what I'm trying to do, because Vedanta is a word tossed around, as you know. And so I'm making an effort. Yes.
Yes. And there's much more to the tradition than what you typically find in your local yoga studio.
Definitely.
It's and in the teaching that I was steeped in, which was more of a neo-Advaita variation of Advaita Vedanta, a lot of the tradition we didn't pay much attention to. And so I'm finding
that I appreciate that you come from that background, but probably that prepared you to
yes.
to be steeped in deeper. I feel like Neo Vedanta is a step, but we don't need to stop there. We can go deeper. Yeah.
Well, it certainly gave me very powerful experiences
Mm-hmm.
of inner freedom,
Mm-hmm.
which have changed my life.
Yes.
And so that's been a source of profound inspiration for me for the past 30 years, really.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I'd like to start with in terms of our interview is you often mention your grandfather as your spiritual guide.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that you are part of a lineage. It's a 2,000-year-old lineage, but recently your grandfather, your father, and now you are the lineage holders. And I think the significance of being part of a lineage is something that is important for people to understand. And I would love for you to speak about the lineage that you are in and what it means for you to be part of a lineage, to be the head of a lineage, and what that brings to your teaching that would be missing otherwise.
Thank you for beginning with the lineage. Because we lineage trained teachers don't aspire to be anything but the transmitters of vehicles or embodiments of the lineage. This way, we are not trying to be unique, we are trying to be in service to a Sanatana, eternal truth of Vedanta, Advaita, that is being conveyed. And we trace our beginnings either to Shiva or to Vishnu as the ultimate teacher. So in our case, we begin with Narayana, Vishnu. And so we always say Narayana Samarambham. It all began with Narayana, the Ishvara. And Ishvara is not a person, but a principle of divinity that dwells in all beings, every particle of the universe. And it is that is the Guru for us. And Vyasa Shankara, Vyasacharya, Shankaracharya are whose teachings we study, whose commentaries, whose teachings we study. and then Asmadacharya Paryantam. Then we go through our immediate rememberable teachers whose cautions, whose teachings are being carried to us, which includes my great 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 grandfather, my great grandfather, my grandfather, my father, and myself. So these are the teachings. And just to be precise, my father skipped the robes from my grandfather to me. He's
Yes.
renowned as a spiritual teacher and a cultural ambassador, and I think he's had every award and honor in our land. But he skipped the robes. He didn't take them on because
I,
he was probably the only person who went the other way. But he gave me a lot of teachings by being on the world stage. I think I imbibed what it means to be carrying the truth, but be outside it at the same time, like be inside
yes.
and outside. So he was that kind of a teacher for me. He's a media personality, well known. But then I got the robes, and being the first female leader in my family, it's interesting. And we have a lineage set up back in Ayodhya in Uttar Pradesh, northern India, in the city of Ayodhya, where Lord Rama was born. And there, my uncle supervises, who's in his 90s, while I'm here, and I go back and forth a lot. When you ask, what does it feel like to be, what is this experience like? It's an experience of responsibility. And Jeff, for me, the reason you didn't hear about me maybe until a decade ago, I mean, for 2 decades, since age 40, I've been more active. Prior to that, I was still figuring out how to carry this responsibility, how to be a householder sage, a mother, a wife, how to be in the Western world. So if I was probably not the lineage holder, I could have been out there more. And so it took me a while to strike that balance between holding the accuracy and purity of my teachings, being in the West, having international students who, from every religion, culture, and how to do that. It took a while, I would say.
Mm, I can understand that,
Mm,
that it would. And I would say fundamental to what you're teaching, you wrote a book called The Sovereign Self.
mhm,
And fundamental to what you just the essence of what you teach, and the essence of, as far as I understand, the Vedas, what the Vedas teach, and what Vedanta is about, is that we are an inherently free and unlimited being. That's not the self that we know. We know
mhm.
a self, a conditioned self that feels very limited, uh, and has all kinds of feelings. But the the goal of the Vedantic teachings is to discover the true, inherent, unlimited, free self that you are, and live as an expression of that in the world. And I would love for you to speak about that inherently liberated, sovereign self that you write about so beautifully.
Yeah. Our everyday experience is quite bound, quite limited, constrained by time, space, circumstances, what we call destiny. There are some fixed circumstances in our life, and no matter how much we duck and turn right, left, north, south, we can't seem to evade them. Similar toxic situations or difficulties come our way, and when we think we have it all together, we still feel unfinished inside and incomplete and insufficient. The non enoughness takes over. There's also the fear of change, decay, disease, depravity, all kinds of things that are constantly afflicting us in samsara, in this phenomenal world. But yet there is a part of us that is boundless, and that is known as Atma in Sanskrit. And the definition of Atma is Apanoti Sarvamiti Atma, that which is eternally boundless is self. And we are the only unique living beings who are not only aware, because even a caterpillar is aware of its circumstances, but we are self aware, we are God aware, we are universally aware, we are aware of the whole. We have that capacity through meditation, contemplation, purification of our reflection. And we can turn the lens of our awareness to discover that boundless aspect of ourselves. And we all do when we close our eyes for a minute in meditation, when we surrender to what is. When we are controlling, we're bound. And the moment we let the whole thing just flow, we become boundless again. So every tradition, every person in every era has touched that boundless aspect. Otherwise, by now, humanity would have self annihilated itself. We couldn't have survived if we didn't have that. And we touch that momentarily in deep sleep, also, as you know. In the deep sleep state of consciousness, we experience some reflected bliss, and it comes from this boundless aspect where we say, ah, I know, no dreams, nothing, but I'm feeling good. I had a good sleep. That good feeling comes from being close. The mind was quiet, the senses were quiet, and we touched that boundless. We just touched it. We just kind of were outside it, superficially touching it. But we feel we wake up with a smile. And of course, the meditators amongst us, the yogis, the inward ones, the seers, um, across traditions have touched that and known it and called it by different names. So call it any name, but you cannot remove, call a rose by any name. A rose is a rose. Call that
Right.
self by any name. It's boundless. It's freeing. It's what liberates us from the chains of our own mind and circumstances. And according to the Vedic tradition, it's our business to discover that. It's our dharma to discover that. It's not just enough to be dharmic, is to be a good person, but to discover that essence of whoever that good, bad, ugly, lovely is. That's eternal, that's bountiful. So, sovereign self, I put these two words together because I felt like true sovereignty lies with knowing this self, because everything else compromises us.
Yes.
We become emotionally dependent. We get caught up in vasanas or drives that control us, unconscious drives that we are carrying across lifetimes to be or become something in the world, to have a certain kind of body, to have certain kind of knowledge in our intellect. We become curators of a reality that is not real, really. And so sovereign and self was an invitation, Jeff, to discover that inner majesty, really.
Oh, beautiful. So, as I mentioned earlier, years in spiritual community left me with many powerful experiences, as practice can do,
Mm-hmm.
of course. We did a lot of practice, meditation mainly, but prostrations and mantra and many practices. But one particular experience left me for a few days um, awake through all stages of waking, dreaming, and dreamless sleep. So it's an experience of what I've heard called Turiya, and the and that part of me, what I knew was that that part of me was always awake, had always been awake, would always be awake. It was awake before I was born, and it would continue to be awake after this body completed.
Mm-hmm.
And everything that was fear of death disappeared. And when I talk to you now, and when I've listened to your audios, I feel that part of me vibrating. It comes awake in, I attribute that to your own attainment and the transmission that you have. Uh, and I don't know, your teaching is very traditional in the sense that you really teach the Vedas, and I'm very excited about, you take people through long journeys through various classic texts, and I think that's important. Uh, and yet, I also feel that you have this energetic transmission, and I would love to hear you talk about the role of both the understanding, the depth of study that's in the traditions, and but also this kind of just energetic recognition that often accompanies it.
It does take one to recognize another, and when we are at a similar stage of looking at reality, it changes the paradigm for everyone, you know. But there is this saying in the Upanishads, "Yatha drishti tatha drishyam," as is the seer, so is the seen. And you can have the seeing like a fish, and a fish is looking everywhere. So we have distracted awareness, which is our mundane everyday awareness. Then you have the ekagra drishti, where you are steady. And I'm sure that happens with you too, Jeff, when our students come to us and they're unfolding all their angst, but we're holding them in steady gaze, they become steady.
Mhm.
They become steady
Yeah.
less by what you say, but by your presence, because as you are seeing, so it becomes.
Yes.
But then there is this higher drishti of the darpan, the mirror drishti. So if you are already awake to the Turiya Avastha, even if you've had periods of that, it doesn't happen 24/7, but you've had that. Once you've had that, there's no unhaving that.
Mhm.
There's no undoing it. Similarly, I too experience Turiya frequently, and so I think all the time. And so uh, somebody who is sensitive or receptive, different people describe it differently. You pointed it, that's Turiya, that's that inner awake one. Others say things like, I feel so relaxed with you, or I feel like my mind's quiet now. But it is that effect that we are having, where as is our awareness, so is becoming our surroundings. And it's not a conscious process. It just happens. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, right. And it's nothing that you do
Yeah.
in a sense. It just happens. M- In the tradition I was in, transmission was considered very powerful, but it was generally seen as something that the teacher was doing to the student. But later I realized it's really something that happens in the meeting, right? It's a resonance that occurs in the between people. It's not because if it was a power that a teacher had, it would happen with everyone, but it doesn't. It happens sometimes.
But there is definitely for a shift in that kind of awareness. Like you can have a room full of people with fish-like awareness of darting minds and senses, and nothing would happen. And then walks in this person. I don't know if to
Yes,
call them a teacher or a jnani or a realized one or an Advaitin, and walks in someone, and the room changes.
yes, that's true.
Yeah, and if there are more than one like that, then the room's buzzing with, with recognition.
Very true.
Yeah.
Now, you have decided to live in the West, at least a great deal of time. And it seems like you've decided to teach to non-Indians. So you've decided, as you said earlier, you're teaching to a global population of people. Uh, I guess first I'm wondering what brought you to make that choice? And second of all, how do you feel these traditional Vedantic teachings are being embraced by the people of more Western cultures, say?
What brought me here must be some higher mechanisms of the universe, which has a plan for everyone. My Baba, my guru, did tell me when I was very young that he was a man of few words, but when I was 9 and I was led through a fire of initiation called Upanayanam, that now she will study the Veda. Like I would run around in the courtyard, that was okay while he was teaching others. But now I could sit down and chant with him. So that time he said, when you grow up, you will go abroad. He used the word Videsh, the other country, and you will establish the Veda. And I was so young, and my cousins who heard it started teasing me that they'll put me on a boat and I'll go to Sri Lanka because that's the only country I knew which was across the water. Because I was only 9 and we didn't have that level of awareness. And then circumstances worked their way out, and I was here. But once I was here, I met these deep seekers, these souls, who were no different from any other person because they were mumukshus, they were deep seekers. They want moksha. So now I have students across 21 countries. India is one of them. I have Muslim students, Christian students, Sufi students, because that's where they begin. And
Hmm.
then they are journeying towards the self, which is beyond religion, gender, culture, language.
Yes.
And I do find myself comfortable here now.
Hmm.
Um, and probably I'm, I would say that I'm not fighting my destiny.
Hmm.
I don't know if I'll end up going back to India once my uncle is of age that, or at a stage of life where he cannot run this. But now
Right.
that we are all on online and things, I feel like I'm going to remain an international teacher,
Even if you're in India, that
even if
makes
I'm
sense.
in India. Yeah.
No reason not to.
No reason not to. And I found my seekers no less. And I am proud of them, and they are amazing. And I am humbled by their seeking, by their depth. And so, truth has no gender, no color, no caste, no creed.
Mm.
It's just
Yes.
what it is. Yes.
And so our issue is specifically about spiritual practice. And what would you say are the practices that you most teach? And what are the effects of those practices?
No, we teach many, many practices, but if I have to speak about Advaita Vedanta, then our core practice is Viveka Vairagyam, discernment, and then dispassion from what is not real, what is Maya, what
Mhm.
is an illusion.
Mhm. Mhm.
And this constant discernment between Nitya and Nitya, eternal and non eternal, the self and the non self, is an important aspect of an Advaita inquiry and Advaita practice.
Right.
And then Vairagyam is, raga means coloring, and Vairagya is discoloring, to decolor ourselves constantly from our roles, from our cultural identifications, and to come back into the self
Mm.
and come back into our divinehood, divinity. I'm there's a slight difference in the way I teach Advaita. We begin with God. So it's a theistic Vedic Advaita. We begin with God and we accept God outside duality. Then we accept God everywhere, qualified non-duality. And then we accept the God-like self. And so at that time the outer God dissolves.
Mm.
And then the inner God, the Atma, remains. So it's a theistic journey in the traditional sense.
Yes.
And so there are practices then, such as Bhakti Yoga. Practices are their own. To if we have to weep, we weep to this eternal God.
Mhm.
And and so our concept of God is inclusive, not exclusive. Our
Yes.
concept of God can be both with qualities or without qualities. So we give them whole umbrella of choices, but there is a supreme power. Otherwise, the
Yes.
ego will think I'm supreme
Mhm.
and too quickly experience self and imagine itself to be self-realized. That's a concern. So we
Yes.
have to surrender in Bhakti Yoga, but we get a lot of support. Then in Karma Yoga, we serve that God through our actions. So that's our practice then. Then in Upasana Yoga, practices like Gayatri chanting, meditation, Vak Tapa, speech modification. These are our practices. And then in Gnan Yoga, Vivek Vairagyam, and the Sadhana Chatushtayam, which I talk about in the Sovereign Self, the 4 steps broken down into 9 sub-steps, is what we work towards. I don't know how many students follow me along all the way, but many do.
Okay.
And some flower at the level of Bhakti Yoga and they stay there.
Yes.
Some journey with me to Karma Yoga, others go back to Bhakti Yoga because it's the most natural way to connect with something higher than you. And
Mhm.
the very few journey with me to Jnana Yoga, to Advaita pure. But those who do, they have been having different practices.
Yes.
But once we are in Gyan Yoga, then nothing else matters but deepening that oneself. Yeah.
Yes. And
So they
and
vary based on who I'm talking to, what I'm teaching, where they are at. Yeah.
Mhm. My understanding is that the Advaita Vedanta teaching, which is essentially the discrimination that you were speaking about between the real and the unreal.
Mm,
So in Ramana Maharshi's case, for instance, he used the question, "Who am I?" that you would just
mm,
ask repeatedly. In
mm,
the who that you're looking for is the unlimited who.
mm.
But my understanding is that that is a practice that traditionally would be done after you've done a lot of other practices,
Yes.
bhakti practices. And so because I ran into an Advaita Vedanta school first, I started, you know, later looking at bhakti yoga.
Mm,
Particularly, I can see that bhakti was sort of part of my path anyway. It
mm,
almost has to be. You know, you sort of have to fall in love with the divine to do this. But more recently, I've been interested in learning more about bhakti yoga, particularly, and I actually started listening to your series of teachings on
mm,
bhakti
mm.
because I've never done any formal practice uh, or ritual in bhakti, and I think it's important. I think that's a very important part of the path that develop that devotion and love of the divine, and um, I find it very moving, and I think it's very valuable for people in the contemporary world to
So
have that practice.
even Lord Krishna teaches Gyan Yoga first. He teaches Advaita first in chapter
Okay.
2 in the Gita. And
Hmm.
then he goes to chapter 3, Karma Yoga and Bhakti Yoga all the way in 18 and then spread throughout. So I feel that like teachers like Ramana Maharshi were, and even my grandfather was teaching a lot of Advaita. So, and probably towards the end of my life, I might only teach Advaita um, because we are there. But when teachers like me, when we are running a wisdom school, we have to understand that souls are coming from all kinds of clouded, muddy inner awareness. And so, for their purification, for their beautification, for their restfulness, and for their redirection of their efforts from their self absorbed tendencies towards, let's say, the universal tendencies and divine tendencies, in that journey to the self, Bhakti Yoga and Karma Yoga play a huge part, I would say.
Hmm.
Yeah. But like
This is
you might have been done some of this work in previous lifetime. And I meet
true.
a lot of students who, like, you have a propensity towards bhakti and karma without labeling it, and that's why we teachers teach Gnana Yoga a little bit first, like Krishna did, to say, just in case this is not your first time, here is the real deal.
and
Yeah.
and I guess bhakti came into my path because fundamentally I fell in love with my teacher just completely
Oh,
and
that's beautiful.
devoted my life to them. And
Mm,
I often said, if my teacher had been teaching Christianity or Islam, or I would have been that. I studied Advaita Vedanta because that's what the teacher was teaching, but I didn't. I wasn't drawn to it. I didn't know anything about Advaita Vedanta when I started. Just the teacher opened me, and that's what drew me the whole time is that constant, the energy of love for the teacher just kept me moving forward.
Yeah.
But you bring up something that I would love to talk to you about because it's become important to me in the last 5 or 6 years. Because one of the problems that I saw in the way that some teachings are delivered is a teacher has a teaching. Now, what you're doing is you have a wisdom school, as you just said. So you're teaching a lot of different things to a lot of different people. But I've seen many teachers who have their own teaching, probably what worked for them, and they teach that as if it's the only way.
Mhm.
And so if it works for you, fantastic. But if it doesn't work, sometimes people are told that it must be they must be doing something wrong,
Mhm.
right? Because this is the path and it works. And what's become important to me, I had a realization 5 or 6 years ago that a real sense, like a felt sense, we are on a long soul's journey to the divine over many, many lifetimes. And at any particular lifetime, your soul needs a specific thing from you. You know, that this journey, my life and as Jeff is serving my soul's larger journey in particular ways. It doesn't have to look like anybody else's.
Mhm.
It needs to be for the soul, for what my soul needs. And I don't know why the soul needs what it needs, but it doesn't have to be like the person on my right or the person on my left, right? It's ultimately unique to me. And I would love to hear you speak about the relationship between a particular lifetime on earth and this larger journey of the soul, to its ultimate reunion.
So this human birth is rare. Nar janma durlabh mataha, because of this awareness principle. And then this desire is rarer to know self. And then to have, like you said, you fell in love with your teacher. So your teacher became the reason for this conversation that's happening
Yes.
today. So the Mahapurush Samshaya, to connect with that Mahapurush, that great person, is rarer. And they say that all of these three circumstances are conceived by a greater divine reality, a greater reality beyond us. But if the teacher comes to us and gives us a formula, 20 minutes this, 20 minutes that, morning, evening, and you'll be liberated. Or, here's this mantra, or breathe this way, or there's a package, a system that every person has to go through like a mill, then it's a disappointment, actually.
Mhm.
In our tradition, we believe that the Upanishads, the Bhagavad Gita, the Brahma Sutras, these are some very great teachings where few verses transfer you from the transactional plane to the ultimate reality and leave you there by yourself to figure out that what was all that was not real for sure. That surely happens. Our job as Vedic teachers always have been to bring that teaching to the ready soul. In some lifetime, they may perfect bhakti, but bhakti is, it you are no longer struggling and holding on to crumbs in samsara. You're now holding that ultimate reality and you're at peace. You become the Mirabai, you become the saint within, through in your own prayer, and you don't even need a Hindu altar.
Mhm.
Bhakti is universal. So, bhakti is taking the ego from its worldly drug of happiness to finding ananda within through a divine communion. And our job is to give that knowledge and not put it into such a tight framework that we control your reality. And because some would have understood bhakti or done it in another lifetime, we can't stop there. We have to then teach karma yoga. We then have to bring forward Raj Yoga, or its bigger term called Upasana Yoga, of meditations and self-disciplines. And then we have to unfold Jnana, and we have to unfold Jnana Yoga or Advaita throughout, because the whole purpose is the search of the sovereign self. This new way is more recent. It started in the West with a few teachers coming from India and realizing that they could. I almost sense a sense of superiority where they saw white people or different people, but they didn't see Atma.
Mhm.
And so then they dumbed it down, or they diluted the curriculums,
Right.
and they brought it forth in a very simple way. Perhaps their intention was sincere. I'm not saying they were mercenaries, or I'm not saying that, please. All I'm
Yes, I
saying
get
is
that.
there was some gap in feeling like they could just teach this one Patanjali Yoga Sutra, and that's the beginning and end of yoga, for example. Or
Mhm.
we'll teach some Hatha Yoga and that's it. And so systems started forming, money started being collected. Now it has become transferred to India also. So we have the pop guru culture, and
Mhm.
all these gurus have a signature teaching. And sometimes I am also counseled by some very well-meaning students to say, Shunyaji, if you just focused on this, you'd become a really rich teacher. And the richness is what I have within the Atma, and the satisfaction of doing a yajna, doing the right work. I have been given this knowledge, I have to give it back. And students take it, like you are, for example, listening to Bhakti Yoga, and you are a evolved student, and so you will take it to the next level. Through you, it will pass through some other people. And that's what we do. We light the lamps in the hearts. So it's not like I made an intention. I cannot be a formula teacher because I have
Mhm.
not been raised by formula teachers. I have been raised by infinite Brahman showing up as in the body of a guru. So how can I offer a limited, formula
Right.
and cheat myself from
Yes.
this joy of teaching? And every time I teach, I'm sure, Jeff, that happens to you too. When we teach, we become more expanded as a result
Yes.
of that, because
Absolutely.
the real teacher is the teaching. The real teacher is the teaching. And we are all students of the eternal truth at some level. So
Mhm.
this is an unfortunate situation. And I wouldn't say that Ramana Maharshi reduced Vedanta, because if you look at his Vedanta Sar, it has all the elements of Vedanta. Yes, he gave a technique to hold on to. That's
Mhm.
different from minimizing your teaching to a technique. He didn't do
Yes.
that. He
Right.
still gives the basic frameworks of Advaita. And yes, he focused on Advaita, which we have a permission to do. Like if I wanted, I could teach with all honesty one of these yogas, but I I am a higher teacher. I am able to give a focus of all four. Then why shouldn't I? Why shouldn't I? I can even
Yes.
teach Ayurveda and philosophy. So, and I teach the divine feminine. So why shouldn't I? If Ishvara, that ultimate Atma, is flowing through me with all its juice, so to say, why should I not share it? Yeah.
Yes.
Mhm.
And I understand that in
But
the
it's a rare
spiritual,
drive. It's a rare drive.
yes,
This, yeah,
and it's a more difficult road
difficult
in,
road.
in the spiritual marketplace, uh, because it's demanding a lot from people.
Yes.
Uh, but enlightenment demands a lot from people. It's not you demanding a lot from people. It's just the way it is. So that's really beautiful. Well, I think we can end our interview there.